I'm David Cott, host of New History of Spain, and today I bring you a truly exceptional document. A personal diary from the time of the Spanish Civil War written by a teenage girl from Barcelona. It's extraordinary for two main reasons. First, it's a diary, not an autobiographical memoir. Many Civil War memoirs have been published and are undoubtedly valuable, don't get me wrong. But since they were written years after the events, it's easy for the authors to forget things or deliberately leave things out if they reflect badly on them. I'm sure that if I wrote a memoir about my life 10 years ago, it wouldn't convey the same things as if I had written it at the time in diary form, partly because my mindset had changed, and also because I have always had a terrible memory. The value of diaries lies in their intimacy and the raw, immediate thoughts, unfiltered, unedited, and not polished to make the person look good. The second reason it's so interesting is the way it captures the day-to-day life during the war. Descriptions of bombings, death, hunger, and goodbyes are contrasted with moments of boredom, joy, and everyday activities like sewing, playing, watching movies, or dealing with the romantic travels of a teenage girl. For their own mental health, people living in wartime cannot think or talk about the war non-stop. For example, she wrote, quote, May 20th, 1938. I finished the novel Don Quixote. It's wonderful, and I felt sad to finish it after reading it for so many days. I finished it by candlelight. The electric light came on but went out shortly after, end quote. In this episode, I will only be reading a few excerpts that I found particularly interesting. They are grouped by theme, not in a strict chronological order. But I highly recommend reading the diary published as a book if you know Spanish. The author of this story is Pilar Duaygües Nebot, born in La Seu d'Urgell, Catalonia in 1921. She wrote her diary between the ages of 14 and 19. Her family was petite bourgeoisie and owned a flower and pastry shop business in Lleida, which later expanded to Anna, Valencia. They eventually opened a new factory in Melilla before moving to Barcelona in October 1935. When the military coup took place, the Melilla factory was seized, which significantly hurt the family's finances. Her family was well-educated and left-leaning. Her father was a Republican, meaning he was in favor of the Spanish Republic, and she was the youngest of 4 sisters who all studied nursing and supported the anti-fascist cause. Teresa joined the militias that tried to retake Mallorca and later helped defend Barcelona. Mary worked as a journalist, and Ruby served as a nurse on the front lines. During the war, Pilar was a high school student who described herself as a red anti-fascist and was very anti-clerical. Let's start with Pilar's own words about the first days of the war in Barcelona. Quote, Today has been a horrible day. July 19th, 1936 will go down in history. I was woken up by gunfire at 5 in the morning. We were supposed to go to the beach, but Mom didn't let us. Understandably, since the day looked very bad. Really bad. There were machine guns, bombs over here, shots over there, etc. You could clearly hear houses collapsing where the bombs hit. People say it was worse than in 1909, which was wild, and twice as bad as October 6, 1934. This war started because they don't want the current government. They want the monarchy back. But I still don't know who is going to win. There is a lot going on. Anyway, it was a terrible day. We couldn't step out onto the balcony because of the gunfire. We stayed on the staircase talking with neighbors, but the shooting didn't stop. In the afternoon, I tried to nap, but the noise made it impossible. We live next to the friars, the church, and their printing press. The priests were shooting at the nearby barracks with machine guns, rifles, and revolvers. We played parchís on the stairs with the neighbors. Later, they dropped bombs. They echoed through the whole house and set fire to the church, school, and printing press, but we couldn't go outside because of the bullets. The friars managed to escape. No idea how, probably through a secret door. They caught one. It wasn't just that church and convent burning, it was all the churches in Barcelona. You could see the flames clearly. The younger boys, by the way, were throwing stuff inside to keep the fires going. The firefighters came in case the fire spread to nearby houses, but it didn't. In the end, we went to bed. Mama slept in my bed with me, and I fell asleep from exhaustion. July 20th, 1936. Same as yesterday, gunfire woke us up again. We went to Luisa's, the neighbor next door, to check out the fire. There was still smoke. The boys went up to where the priests had lived and brought down chickens, mattresses, tons of clothes, boxes of cookies, a barrel of wine, sodas, and other things. You can really see how they lived. I hate them. They are the reason for so many deaths and injuries in this revolution. They took everything to the hospital for the wounded, which was a very good thing to do. There were obviously a lot of wounded people. Besides all the mattresses they took from there, you could see trucks loaded with clothes and bedding headed to the hospital. So many people died today. They say 60 people from the barracks across the street died. Horrible. The boys got excited and set the printing press and church on fire again, burned the books in the street, set the priests' robes and shirts on fire, played bullfighting with them, and threw church statues into the flames, and so on all morning. We were warned not to go on the balconies or rooftops, or we would get shot. There were non-stop trucks full of wounded headed to the hospital, and trucks carrying bodies stacked on top of each other because there was no space. The radio kept calling for nurses, doctors, and blood donations. They needed help badly. In the afternoon, we read novels to kill time. Luimeta, Nuri, Ruby, and I. I went to her house, and they lent me some books and stuff. On Carmen Street, a priest was burned, and they say the smell was awful. His legs fell apart, it was disgusting. But he brought it on himself. The friars from I don't know where, Jesuits I think, surrendered, and they were treated well. They will probably go to prison later. I went to bed, exhausted. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Mom went to her room. I'm so sick of the strike. On top of all the wounded and dead, the days are dragging on and filled with fear. July 27th, 1936. In the morning, Mom, Ruby and I went to see the mummies at the convent on Passeig de Sant Joan. We went inside the church. Everything is destroyed and burned. The nuns' mummies are disgusting to see. Then we went to the Sagrada Familia, but they wouldn't let us in because it was dangerous. After that, we went to lunch. End quote. As I warned earlier, Pilar's diary reflects strong anti-clericalism, which was common among the Spanish left at the time, especially in Barcelona. But even in the chaos of those first days, a 15-year-old girl could still find time to have fun. Quote, July 24th, 1936. Same as yesterday, armed guards on the streets. In the morning I cleaned the house, read, chatted with neighbors, etc. In the afternoon we went to Luisa's next door. I flipped through magazines, then we played several children's games. We laughed a lot. Some girls from the third floor were there too. Laughing that much felt inappropriate given the situation, so we stopped. We were on the rooftop when we heard shots and went down to the stairs, where we played guessing games and talked. End quote. In Barcelona, a social revolution unfolded, largely driven by anarchists. Among other things, this meant the end of religious celebrations. Up until then, celebrating one's Saint's Day was more important than a birthday, but the revolution changed that. Quote, October 12th, 1936. Today, October 12th, is my Saint's Day, though those celebrations don't count anymore. Nobody gave me anything, and it's sad to think that in other years I always spend it surrounded by my friends. But not in 1936. Well, from now on, there won't be any Saint's Days for anyone. Name Day celebrations will now happen on birthdays. December 25th, 1937. Today, even though it's Christmas, there is no celebration at all. It's wartime. You couldn't even find any turrón anywhere. End quote. Pilar's diary frequently references the food shortages Barcelona was experiencing as early as the fall of 1936. The Duaygües family managed to get by relatively well compared to others, because the father often traveled to Vic, in the more rural central Catalonia where scarcity was less severe. Quote, October 5th, 1936. I got up really early this morning to wait in line for coal. I was there for 3 hours. There were more fights, it started raining, what a disaster, and everyday shopping gets worse. December 24th, 1936. I got up at 5:30 to stand in line for bread. It's horrible, so many people and many were left without any yesterday. Honestly, words can't describe it. I spent the entire damn morning watching fights and all that until 1:30, 8 hours of waiting in line. Then Ruiz arrived from Melilla. He managed to escape from the fascists and told us horrifying things. The Rutllans were killed after being tortured terribly, and many others like them. January 27th, 1937. I went out to pick bread with the ration card. The loaves get smaller every day, and they give out very few. September 25th, 1937. I'm going to eat a little, even though we are suffering greatly from the lack of food. We have a small piece of bread for 2 days, and you have to wait in line for absolutely everything, no matter how small it is. All we are eating is vegetables. We have potatoes because Dad sent some from Vic." End quote. Pilar, being a teenager from a petite bourgeoisie family, was expected to continue her studies. Despite the instability of the time, she eventually enrolled in an academy, trying to live as normal a life as possible during wartime. Quote, November 9th, 1936. Later, I went with Mary to look at an academy I might attend. I think I will go on Monday. I'm really looking forward to it, even if it's just to study accounting, because with the war going on, you can do much else. December 1st, 1936. In the morning at 9, I went to class. I'm finally attending an academy, something I had really been wanting to do. I work on math problems and studied arithmetic. There are lots of students, mostly boys, but there are also some girls. One of the boys looks after us when the teacher is gone. All in all, the time passes in a very pleasant and quick way. In the afternoon at 3, I went to French class and then a spelling. I left at 6. Once I was home, I started studying. After dinner, I helped Tere with her French and went to bed. End quote. If you are listening to this, you are probably looking for more explicitly war-related events, so let's take a look at the horrifying consequences of the war through several diary entries Pilar wrote. Bombings in Barcelona, by planes or ships, were constant, especially in 1937. They often happen in the middle of the night, disrupting people's sleep. As they became more frequent, the sound of sirens, rushing to shelters, hearing of neighbors killed, and experiencing fear for one's life all took a toll on the mental health of civilians. This is especially clear in the case of Pilar's mother. I believe this was the first bombing. Quote, February 13th, 1937. After dinner, while I was reading with Dad, Mary and Ruby were at the cinema, Mom was in bed, and Tere was doing the dishes. Suddenly, we heard, "Pom, pom, pom, pom." It was a terrifying moment. The fascists are here, I thought. And it was true. At first we thought it was planes, but then we realized it was ships. I don't know how many, shelling the city. It sounded as if they were right outside. Dad opened the balcony, and just then, a bomb flew past with a soft sss sound, like hissing, and then it exploded. And then more, 20-something in total. Mom jumped out of bed, and I was extremely nervous. We were so worried about my sisters who were still out. This is a day I will never forget. February 14th, 1937. I got up early and went with Dad to see the damage the bombs did yesterday. Indeed, there was a lot of destruction, 18 victims, and serious devastation. Some houses had huge holes from the explosions. So many bombs were dropped that it's no surprise how bad it got. On Naples Street, there were still pieces of brains and flesh from a couple who were hit by a bomb as they ran to take shelter. It must have been horrifying. Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. May 29th, 1937. At 3 a.m. I was woken up by thunderous noise. It was a bombing. It sounded as if it were happening right outside. A terrifying noise like the end of the wall. We rushed to take shelter on the main floor. I have never seen Mom so scared in my life. It lasted a long time. They say it was 7 fascist planes. There were a lot of casualties, many dead, many wounded. A catastrophe. How hateful they are. Afterward, I still went to school like usual, and in the afternoon stayed at home. End quote. As Spain in the 1930s was a society with a young population due to high birth rates. That meant it was not uncommon for children to be among the casualties or wounded in bombings. Many children also lost their parents because of the war caused by the Spanish nationalist right, supposedly in the name of defending Spain. These realities are also captured in Pilar's diary. Quote, January 5th, 1937. On my way to the academy, I was in the courtyard, watching the boys play football, then walk around with the other girls until we finally went on foot to the Novetats Theatre. Since this week was Children's Week, admission was free, and the place was packed. We had to sit in the gallery. We could hardly see the play, which, by the way, was absolute garbage. Next to me were some refugee kids from Madrid. One of them got a letter from his family telling him his mother had died. And since the poor kid couldn't read, he wasn't aware. And the other kids didn't want to tell him. It's all because of this war, which just keeps getting worse. October 1st, 1937. I went upstairs, and from the gallery I had the perfect view. 4 fascist planes were bombing the city, and thick smoke was rising from the houses. Suddenly, anti-aircraft guns roared through the air. It was horrible. I was truly scared. When it finally stopped and things seemed calm, Mom got home and scolded us for not going to the shelter. The bombs hit a school, and they still haven't managed to recover the children's bodies. They say it was a horrific scene. You could see a severe head, an arm, a leg, and so on. So many lives lost. January 19th, 1938. With Mariana, Ferrer, Lita y Meroño, we went to Provença Street, between Roger de Flor and Passeig de Sant Joan, where a bomb had fallen. Firefighters were lowering 2 women with a rope to a street since the staircase had been destroyed, and the whole back part of the building had collapsed. But the worst part was the number of dead and wounded. Many were children who had been playing nearby. Later at night, Tere said the death toll had reached 127, with over 200 injured. In Barcelona, they say they are still pulling out bodies, some horribly mutilated. Today was devastating. So many bombs fell. Everyone is sad and drained. Nobody wants to do anything. All anyone talks about is today's bombing. Mom is still shaken, and everyone just looks downcast. End quote. War doesn't just cause immediate deaths and injuries, it also leaves people permanently disabled. Pilar captures this brutally and vividly. Quote, June 4th, 1938. This afternoon I went to the hospital to pick up some food they had given Ruby. She and the others were up on the rooftop with the nurses playing music on the jukebox. There was a patient there with no arms. He told me how it happened just 15 days ago. What a horrifying story! He was driving a truck full of supplies when 3 enemy trimotor planes chased and bombed him. He was severely injured and lost consciousness. When he came to, he was on a stretcher heading to the hospital. He said he thought, yesterday I died and today I'm alive? It broke my heart. He said part of him would have preferred to die because now he can do anything. January 30th, 1938. Then we went to the hospital to see Ruby, who is working there as a nurse, and she was so happy to see us. We visited some of the wounded. One had his feet falling apart from frostbite he got at the front. It was absolutely horrific. Another had already had his feet amputated. Seeing so much cruelty and suffering fills me with sorrow. You can only see the true face of war in a hospital. End quote. Then Pilar was dropping some bars here. The last line, you only see the true face of war in a hospital? That's as deep and real as it gets. Maybe the people who romanticize conquest and war need that burn into their heads. But in the midst of the horrors and traumatic experiences of the war, Pilar Duaygües also dealt with typical teenage struggles. One of them was the very fact of growing up, of no longer being a child and losing the innocence that comes with it. Quote, June 18th, 1937. Liria Meroño told me about life in the Barrio Chino, and it's horrible. Now I'm learning more and more each day about what we really are. And it's frightening because I'm already old enough to know the necessary things and the truths about our existence. Ignorance is so beautiful, I feel sad and in a bad mood. End quote. The Barrio Chino, a name inspired by the Chinatowns of English-speaking countries, was the common name at the time for what is now known as El Raval. It was a marginal neighborhood with a bad reputation, and Pilar was likely referring to its prostitution and drug activity. On several occasions, she expressed her desire to remain a child if adulthood was as grim as people claimed. Quote, October 20th, 1938. At home, they've loved me too much, and that's why they've never talked to me about life. I remember that Tere always says, "When will you become a woman?" On one hand, I'm glad you are still such a child because childhood and ignorance are so beautiful. If only I could be like you. Ruby and Mary think the same. Mom has never talked to me about it and always avoids the subject. Dad sometimes gets angry when I act up and says I'm just a little girl. All of that came to mind today, and I asked myself, why should I leave this wall of dreams I live in if it's so beautiful? But Laura and Monchi say it's better that I gradually start to learn things, because one day I will be deeply disillusioned and it will be hard to accept. So it's best to ease into it. End quote. And of course, what teenager wouldn't fall in love? Her wartime crush was named Raúl Bein. There was some flirting that began in the summer of 1937, but it never went beyond that. He was a ladies' man. For Pilar, it was an unrequited love that she thought about constantly. The intense emotions brought on by the constant threat to life led her to express herself like this, quote, August 16th, 1937. In the afternoon there was a bombing and we took shelter in the front classroom, and Bain was in front of me. At one point he said something nice to me in conversation, and I couldn't help but say, "I like you a lot." Then I added, because you understand me. He realized I was flustered, and I immediately felt sad. At 8, he came back from dinner and we walked together down Sardegna Street, talking. When we said goodbye, he held my hand tightly. He gave me a drawing of the Puss in Boots. I'm happy, end quote. Pilar's emotions were like a roller coaster. Euphoric highs followed by lows filled with self-doubt or rejection. Sometimes she wanted to forget him altogether, believing she wasn't good enough for him. Quote, October 8th, 1937. But now I want to let go of that idea, that hope I've always carried. Maybe one day Raúl will love me. But no, it's impossible. Now I have seen the truth. So I have to study, read, anything, but think about him? No, no and no. No, no, no. Maybe when I'm older and I read this diary again, I will see what became of me and how my life turned out. That's it. This is my destiny. To suffer. December 10th, 1937. Am I really going to spend my whole life thinking about him? No, it's over. I know I will never ever be his, and he will never love me. What am I worth? Nothing. I'm useless, ugly, and I can't even imagine myself with him. Now I realize how stupid I was not to have figured it out sooner. These dreams I have had until now are completely impossible, end quote. A spoiler alert, she kept thinking about him almost until the end of the war. Back to the war itself, it's fascinating to see the propaganda circulating in Barcelona and the fears people lived with, especially regarding fifth columnists and foreigners helping Franco. Quote, November 10th, 1937. When I got home, I tried on the gas mask in case they drop poison gas bombs. That Tere brought. People are afraid that they will start using this kind of weapon soon. They are already making masks, and it's essential that everyone has one. March 16th, 1938. This afternoon I did my homework and read. Around 7 I took the bus to class, but before reaching Passeig de Gràcia, a young man got on and said, "Comrades, everyone off the bus." Everyone, frightened, got off. I heard him say the government had made a pact with Franco, and that the fascists, the fifth columnists here, were planning to take to the streets. They needed the buses and any man willing to help stop it. I had to walk back home. I don't know if something will happen. They've been saying it for days. The fascists want to take Lleida and all of Spain. Mussolini helps them a lot. He sends them Germans, Italians, Abyssinians, Moors. Quimeta even said there were cannibals fighting, those black men with nose rings. They have tons of foreign planes and ammunition, and no one helps us. They are already drafting 18-year-olds. Everyone is very discouraged because we keep losing territory, but who knows? I believe we have to win. But when? March 19th, 1938. According to a broadcast by Franco from Radio Salamanca, he said he wants to completely destroy the city by Sunday, and that all Catalans who want to leave have 48 hours to do so. So many people are fleeing to the mountains or small towns. This morning I felt really unwell. My friends even called to check if I was alive, with all these bombings. We planned to meet up this afternoon, but Mom absolutely wouldn't let me go because she was afraid the planes will come. April 20th, 1938. The war is going as badly as ever. The fascists took a few towns in Valencia, and because of that we are not getting any oranges. It's been days since we have eaten any. Since Lleida is in their hands now, and that's where our olive oil came from, it's also really scarce. They are saying terrible things about what the Moors and fascists have done when entering towns. At a hospital in Barcelona, they say there are many young girls raped by them. Horrible. End quote. The next entry is especially revealing about the rivalries and mistrust among the Spanish Republican sides' labor unions, which could even poison friendships. Here we see the mistrust between the socialist UGT and anarcho-syndicalist C&T. Quote, September 13th, 1938. Monchi didn't tell me she went to the cinema yesterday, and I'm very upset. She went without even asking if I wanted to go. Now that she's been elected president of who knows what and secretary of who knows what else, she's always hanging out with her party people and always seems to have some hidden agenda. Since she's in the UGT and I'm in the C&T, sometimes I catch her whispering with someone from her party, and when I ask what they are talking about, she says, I can know. That really hurts and makes me mad. She's getting totally carried away with these titles. End quote. Pilar Duaygües joined the C&T in June 1938, at a time when the organization had already become domesticated and fully cooperative with the Republican government. After reading her diary, I can say there is nothing to suggest she was truly an anarchist. If anything, she seemed to believe the Republican propaganda against the Iberian Anarchist Federation during the May 1937 events. So her friendship with Monchi changed even though Pilar wasn't politically involved and was simply a member of the C&T. Let's move on to the final days of the war, just before the fall of Barcelona to Franco's forces. These diary entries really make you feel the desperation of that time. Quote, January 14th, 1939. It's probably close to 11 at night now. Laura just arrived from Barcelona and says that people there seem like robots, that there is a visible sadness everywhere. She says the fascists have advanced a lot, they have already taken Reus, and it's believed they will be here soon. She told me it's not even worth studying anymore because we won't finish the school year since the situation is so bad. We talked for a while. She says I don't care about these things and that I don't feel the revolution. In a way, she's right. Since I don't understand anything about politics or unions and I find it all absurd, that's probably why I don't worry about it. I do think about the war, but not that much. I've been so comfortable here at the institute and I don't have any brothers who are sent to the front. Still, I feel it in the wall outside my own, in the sadness that hits me when I think about those fighting on the front, or those leaving, in the severe food shortages, things like that. But I don't know. For a long time now, it seems to me that we, who are right, are the ones who have to win, by force. The fascists simply can't take over. What a slavery that will be! And even though I now realize we are losing so much, I still hold on to hope that we will win the war. Last night, they brought in a ton of refugee children. They had been in Horta, but the daycare they were staying in is now needed as an emergency hospital. We had to set up beds so they could sleep, placing mattresses on the floor of the auditorium to save a space. It broke my heart to see them. Poor kids, many of them orphans. That's when I really felt the war. January 23rd, 1939. All week, school's been a mess. Lots of students are skipping class, and sometimes even the teachers. No one wants to work, everyone just talks about the war. In just the last 8 days, the fascists have made huge advances through Catalonia. There is widespread panic, especially because of the bombings. For 2 or 3 days now, they have been happening non-stop. Today I had to walk because of the air raid alarm, and I only made it to 1 class. Even then, I couldn't hold back the tears, thinking about the painful moment we are living through. I found out about the terrible tragedy that happened to Gasco. His whole family died in the bombing, and they still haven't found his father under the rubble. Poor guy. Everything is like that now. January 25th, 1939. Monday afternoon, classes ended for good. We found out the institute was being closed. I was thinking about how serious things were, thinking about what Reverté had said. I will shoot myself if the fascists come, before they get me. Reverté said that as soon as I got to the institute, I should burn all party-related documents and papers, then go straight home. When I got home, I found Mom very scared. The fascists are really close now. You can clearly hear the cannon fire from the front, and the bombings are constant. Massive ones, really. It's terrible, terrible. There is widespread panic. Mom was burning all her letters and papers. I will probably have to burn you too, if the fascists come, but only at the last possible moment. If they found this diary, they will probably execute me for all the things I have said. Today Mom didn't let me go at all. I was supposed to go to the institute to help fortify it, but she forbade me. Poor Mom is so terrified, she has no appetite, and she's suffering so much. January 26th, 1939. Mom keeps burning anything that could be used against us. I'm worried about my diaries. I've hidden them between the mattresses, but I will probably have to tear them up. If they found them, my whole family and I could be doomed just for being anti-fascist. Tomorrow I will hide them between the mattress stuffing. I had to burn Reverté's drawings. They were portraits of Durruti, Companys, and the like. I don't know what I would have given not to have to get rid of them. It's terrible that now we have to submit to the will of people we hate so deeply. After all the horrific bombings they have carried out over these years, we now have to live under them. And they will force us to cheer for Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco. This afternoon I cried, not just from sadness, but from thinking about what slaves we are going to become." End quote. Although she considered destroying her diaries, Pilar didn't go through with it. For 2 months in 1939, her neighbor hid them out of fear of a search. Thanks to that act, which could have cost Pilar and her family their lives, we now have this deeply personal and historically significant account of the Spanish Civil War. Just imagine how many other diaries like this have been destroyed or are still forgotten in drawers, never published. That makes me really sad. Now let's move on to when Barcelona was occupied by Franco's troops, to what life was like in those first days of occupation, and what Pilar Duaygües thought about it all. Quote, January 27th, 1939. Barcelona is fascist. Today Franco's troops began marching through the streets. Everything is covered in monarchist flags and filled with cheers for Franco. So far, there hasn't been any bloodshed, and everyone seems thrilled to be a fascist. They are all acting very kind, saying they want to light up the city and lower the cost of living and provide plenty of food. For now, during these early days, they want to win people over. But their true colors will show soon enough. Newspapers have come out speaking ill about the Reds, Negrin, and Companys, while praising Franco. I feel a terrible hatred for them, just like my family. I went outside and saw the Moroccan troops and soldiers marching, and this boy waving a monarchist flag. I had to clench my fists and grit my teeth not to rip it from his hands and shout all the insults the fascists deserve. It felt like a citywide festival. Today is a very happy day for the fascists, but for us, we'll have to endure and suffer. Now the Workers' Institute, such a wonderful creation of the Republic, will become the home of the treacherous Jesuits once again. And only the bourgeoisie and those who can pay large sums will be able to study there. That's fascism. Only the rich get an education, the workers are sent off to labor like slaves. I hate fascism. May it die 1,000 times, and long live independence and democracy. Since I won't be able to say it out loud from now on, I will air it out here. February 12th, 1939. I'm very happy because last night Dad came home. Oh, what a relief to know he's alive after 15 days of not knowing if he was even still living. He's thinner and has aged so much. He told us about the horrors and suffering he endured when the fascists entered Vic. Fortunately, he stayed calm and kept a cool head. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here to tell the tale. February 20th, 1939. Monchi came by yesterday. We talked for a while about the current situation. She says she is afraid people will find out how involved she was in the party. She ran into someone she knew from the party who told her that members of the CNT, UGT, and Catalan left have joined forces and are holding clandestine meetings. They are working hard in favor of the Reds. I'm starting to feel hopeful again. A lot of people are turning red because of the injustices the fascists are committing. They are extremely harsh, and their orders even more so. The other day, when Tere went to the cinema with Pita, the crowd stood to salute the fascist anthem, but they refused. If they hadn't been accompanied by 2 Italian officers, they would have been arrested, and the house would have been searched to find out what our family believes. It scared them to death. March 5th, 1939. It infuriates me to go to the cinema because you are forced to do the fascist salute with your arm raised. Franco's idiotic face appears on the screen while they play their anthem, and everyone has to stand and salute. If you don't, the guards stationed there beat you. They want to send the Catalans to Castile and bring others here to stop this language from being spoken. They will do the same with the Navarrese, Valencians, etc., and I don't think they will succeed. After these languages have persisted for so many years in freelance, they won't get their way now just because of some whim of Franco, the imbecile, and all of his cronies. March 29th, 1939. The war is over! That's what everyone is saying, and what the newspapers report. Yesterday, Madrid surrendered, and in Barcelona the sirens didn't stop blaring in celebration of the war's end. People hung decorations from their balconies, though most were forced to do it. I was in a terrible mood. We lost. I cried so hard seeing those criminal fascists walk away with the victory. But we won't tolerate them for long. There will be another uprising, this time from our side. And when that happens, fascism will be buried for good. It may take a few years, but it will come. This thought, one shared by all of us Reds, brings me a little joy. It's hard to even explain how evil they are. They are so vile. They make the prisoners suffer terribly, and you must tread carefully with what you say. If they suspect your ideas oppose theirs or their hateful caudillo, they will seize you and torture you mercilessly. Well, we have to learn to lose. But more and more people are turning red as they witness the injustices they and the wretched cockroaches, priests, do. Just now, I received a postcard from Monchi. She's still in Lleida and doesn't know when she will be back. I'm happy she thought of me. The other day I went to her house, but of course she wasn't there. I ran into Pérez. He escaped from the front and came here. I was so glad to see him, and he felt the same. Maybe now that the war is over, I will find out what happened to Rever, Laura, and the rest. I want that so badly, so badly. End quote. And what happened to Pilar after the Civil War? Like so many families, the Duaygües family was shattered by it. Quote, August 11th, 1939. At the table today, I really missed my dear sisters. I wish them so much luck, so much, and I hope we'll be together again soon. But I don't think we'll ever be the 4 sisters we once were. I can't help the tears from coming. We are not little girls anymore. We won't play or fight like we used to. And I still feel like such a child. End quote. Pilar's 3 older sisters went into exile in France because of their roles in the war. Not long after, Teresa and Ruby emigrated to Venezuela and didn't return until the late 1970s, after the dictatorship ended, and died just a few months later. Mary returned from exile in the 1940s and went on to publish numerous children's stories. As for Pilar, she studied to become a teacher, but she became a homemaker and spent her free time painting and writing stories that were never published. A few months after the war ended, she met Emili Prats, a former fighter from Estat Català, the Catalan independence youth movement, who was forced to serve in the Francoist military in Vigo, Galicia. He became her husband and great love, and they had 2 children together. This is the last entry in her diary, quote, March 17th, 1940. I'm happier every day than the day before. I love every hour I spend with my dear Emili, and he loves me so much too. This morning we went for a walk in Park Güell. We sat down, leaning against a tree, and he rested his head on my lap while I stroked his hair. He had wanted to do that for so long. He always said, someday when we go into the countryside, I want to lie down and rest my head on your lap while you caress me. And today he finally got his wish and felt so happy. This afternoon we went to the cinema. I don't know. Every time he kisses me, I love him more. I love him so much. On the way home we were joking around and saying silly things, but we had so much fun. He said to me, "Pili, today is the happiest day of my life." End quote. Pilar Duaygües passed away in 1997 and her diary was published in 2017. You can find the link to buy her diary in Spanish on Amazon in the description, if you would like to read the full version, which I highly recommend. It's truly an extraordinary document, and I love the way she expresses herself with such clarity and emotion. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a like and share it to help spread the word. And if you subscribe, who knows? Maybe next time I will bring you another wartime diary or some memoirs. Thanks for listening and see you next time!